May 25th, 2022, a Reddit user called Post-Only yugioh informs the Yu-Gi-Oh subreddit that the 5-time Yu-Gi-Oh Championship Series winner, Andre Torres, has been suspended for a year for cheating. But what exactly was the cheat? What was the infraction? Well, initially Andreas was also confused. He said in a YouTube video on his channel that he just wasn't sure why he had been banned. Eventually he received an email that explained to him that it's for this clip here. It's a real blink and you'll miss it moment, so listen close. During a deck tech or deck profile, I'm going to use the Magic terminology more than the Yu-Gi-Oh terms, I'm sorry. He had this to say.
Just some tokens, you put this on top, they think that you're playing with Sword Soul.
Listen again and try to ignore the fact there's a Nintendo Switch on the side for some reason. I don't really understand that.
Just some tokens, you put this on top, they think that you're playing with Sword Soul.
This is the Sword Soul token he's referring to, a physical representation of a token generated by another card in the game, a card that is not in Andres' deck. The intent here, explicitly stated by Andres, is to mislead his opponent into thinking he's in a deck that he's not playing. The idea being that would inform your opening play patterns and the cards that you'd see in your opening hand and be happy with. As far as I understand, you can't mulligan in Yu-Gi-Oh anyway. This is much more impactful than Magic, where this kind of thing's okay. But this got him suspended for a year, which is wild to me because it's the kind of thing that people joke about in Magic all the time, or even do. Even in my earliest time of going to GPs, people would have the wrong tokens in their deck boxes, so when they pop the lid off their box and the opponent sees the wrong thing, they're going to think they're on a different deck to what they actually are on, and that would inform their mulligan decisions and what their opening hands would be and how they would play. It's a little bit of misdirection. It's a little bit of mind games before you begin the game. Hell, one of the greatest bluffs in Magic history, and easily the greatest big brain bluff in the modern era of Magic, involves Magic's most famous professional player, Luis Vargas, picking up a token in the middle of a game of Magic, which in turn leads his opponent down the wrong line of thinking, and this costs his opponent the game, and Luis places and goes into the finals of Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. I want to unpack how these two compare. They're not quite the same thing, but I do think Luis's example may not fly under Konami, when it was kind of applauded by Magic players. Not all of them, but most of them. 4 years ago, Luis Vargas had a stellar run that put him into the 9th Pro Tour top 8 of his lifetime in Atlanta at Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. He was playing what was called mostly white aggro, and he finds himself in a pseudo mirror match against Jeremy Desani on red-white aggro. In the top 8 of this particular Pro Tour, it was first to 3 wins, and LSV was up 2 games. So they went into a third game that was reasonably close. Both players found themselves on 7 life each, and staring down a board where each player needed to attack in a threatening way to ensure they can break through and end the game. The commentary team tells us that LSV's deck is favoured in the long game in this aggro mirror because it's been designed to do so. He is playing a lot of life gain creatures like this hawk here. Luis draws his card for turn and does some thinking. He arranges his mana in a very specific way. This is the first part of the bluff. Adanto, the first 4, allows Luis to make a 1/1 life-linking vampire for 3 mana, and he signposts this pretty heavily by placing 3 mana to the left and the 4 to the right. He is clearly showing he has mana to make a token. But in this particular format, 4 untapped mana including 2 white meant something else as well. So that since that day, we all think about when attacking into 4 open mana. LSV's deck was playing 1 singular copy of a mass kill spell, Settle the Wreckage, in his sideboard. This card will remove all attacking creatures from the game and give you some largely useless lands in exchange. It's a huge game changer in the aggro mirrors because you can take out your opponent's board wholesale and leave yours intact, because it only kills attacking creatures and can be cast on your opponent's turn. Of course, the biggest way to get a massive blowout or Settle the Wreckage is to try and bait your opponent into a big attack, which is where we're going. Jeremy knows LSV has a Settle in his list, 1 singular copy, and it has to be considered every time he attacks into 4 open mana. Magic players have had this feeling for a long time now since Settle was printed. Importantly, LSV's history of Benalia is throwing a lot of damage next turn. Time is running out for Jeremy, so he has to make some maneuvers that push him towards just winning and going on to the next game. At this point, Jeremy can play an Adanto Vanguard in his hand, or 4 mana Explosive Buff my team and get 2 hasty creatures in reinforcements. Jeremy opts to go aggressive. Aurelia here can block next turn thanks to having Vigilance and not tapping to attack, but the rest of the team can go on offense if he wants to try and close out the game. He leans forward and starts mathing out the attack, and Luis does the second part of the 3-part bluff. He begins to start visibly counting himself as if the math actually matters. It doesn't, because the coverage know, and they told the audience, we know now, that settle the wreckage is in LSV's hand. He's got the settle. That means the math doesn't matter. He can just pay 4 mana and kill everything attacking him. So if he attacks with everything, there's no need to do any counting whatsoever, because the settle is the correct play. The audience knows this, Jeremy does not. That's dramatic irony. As Jeremy is counting through and considering his options, we get the third and final part of the bluff. LSV reaches for a token to the side. At Pro Tours, there are tokens for anything that is makeable by those decks at the side of the game to make the games look nice and clean for the audience. He grabs the Adanto Vampire token as if to suggest he's going to make it or that it matters to this combat, and then he puts it back down. Remember, at this point, Jeremy is not committed to the attack. He's turned his thing sideways, but he's not said, that's my attacks. He's mathing it through. He's moving LSV's creatures around, just talking out loud about how the blocks will go. He could choose, if they're doing the math, not to attack fully and just commit in the air with Aurelia and maybe a body on the ground for a trade to force them to kill one of Luis's creatures. Luis's reach for the token is referred to metaphorically by the commentary team as the pen trick, or a version of the pen trick. The pen trick is where an opponent is looking to attack you, and as they go to do it and declare their attacks, you reach for your pen to denote that you're planning to change your life total, suggesting you're just going to take the damage, that you have no good blocks, no effects, no spells. Of course, once the attack is declared, you can place the pen back down and move to blocks. It's considered a little bit scummy by some people, but on the whole, the pen trick has been part of Magic for decades as part of the competitive scene, and you kind of need to season yourself or condition yourself not to fall for it. Whilst there's a bluffing technique there is pretty known in competitive Magic, it's not that commonly seen. The wonderful part of all this moment on coverage, though, is that once LSV puts the token down, Jeremy picks it back up and starts using it to physically map out how the combat's going to go. Absolutely stellar moment for coverage, and I wish we got more of this kind of stuff. LSV confirms that this is the attack, and Jeremy says yes, that he's just deciding on where to put his mental trigger from the Aurelia, and Luis then just turns his land sideways and reveals his settle, slamming it into play, and the hand is extended. The game is over. LSV has won, and he's on to the finals of Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. It is honestly a rather wonderful, exciting moment. It doesn't matter what your opinions of either the players or LSV, one of the most famous Magic players of all time, that doesn't matter. Even if you're not a fan of these people, this is an incredible moment of competitive Magic. It is full of just such interesting sides that you don't see very often. These kind of bluffs aren't that common. And the whole thing is a bit more layered with drama and gravitas when I add more details to the story. Luis is playing a Miser's single settle the wreckage, not because he wants to draw it, but the plan is not to bring it in at all and not play the control role in the aggro mirrors, instead throwing off his opponent when he sees in the open deck lists, and means that the opponent has to play around it at all times, even when Luis hasn't brought it in. It's like free value. But he does, he brings it in, he bluffs it, his opponent buys it, and then he blows them out.
The absurd part is, the only reason I have Settle the Wreckage in my deck is our team wanted one of us to play one Settle the Wreckage so people would be scared of it. And I was like, whatever. We were gonna roll for it. And I was like, whatever, I'll just play it. I don't care. It just sounds funny. I just wanted the story. And then it was the perfect setup because I had Adanto. So if he doesn't do anything, I just make an Adanto token, make a vampire, and it conceals the settle, and there's just really nothing he could do about that.
Beyond that, he almost drops it upon drawing a card in the turn before he sells the bluff. The entire gig would have been up. The opponent would have been in the know, and one of the greatest bluffing moments in Magic history would never have happened if Luis Vargas just dropped the settle like a fucking idiot. But back to the point at hand. Would this fly in Yu-Gi-Oh? I have been told over the years that bluffing in Yu-Gi-Oh is rather non-existent, especially in this sense of bluffing with outside elements that aren't part of the core game. You can bluff in Yu-Gi-Oh! I haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh! In a while, so I'm going to try not to get things wrong here, but by placing cards face down, that might be not advantageous to do so, or aren't even traps, in order to bluff that you might have a useful trap in that scenario. This is a valid and a usable way the game rules work. But reaching for a token outside the game, well, we don't have an example of that. But if they have the example of the token in the deck box, which got a player suspended for an entire year, Luis' play is different. His deck can make Adanto Vampire tokens, and it wasn't a misdirect in the same way that Andreas was banned for. It's not having a zombie token in the deck box, for example. But I just don't think this grandiose display of misdirection leading to a big win would go through fine with Konami, considering the deck box thing got someone banned for a year. In the email to Andreas, Konami explained their issue was because it was intentionally used to mislead the opponent. It was classified as misrepresenting the game state, which is wild to me as the game hasn't even started yet. And again, it's not like all Magic players were totally okay with LSV's pen vampire token trick, because some people were upset that something outside of the game had an effect. Personally, I love it. I love these mind games and 16 chess you can play with small advantages from the stupidest of things. Andreas has said officially on his own YouTube channel that it was ridiculous, and he wasn't cheating. He was even arguing the point that actually the deck he was playing played similar cards to the deck he was pretending to be anyway, almost like it's just an ongoing meme and habit that got him caught out. It just stinks to me as well of Konami making an example of someone to avoid what they see as bad sportsmanship, which is actually kind of applauded in Magic. Not the bad sportsmanship itself, but these extra mind games. In Magic, having the wrong token in your deck box is perfectly okay. It is not cheating. You can't misrepresent the game state of a game until the game has begun. Kind of wild, right? But it makes sense. An example of this is just having a random token that you don't use in your deck, so it misrepresents what you're playing. For example, having a 1/1 goblin in your deck that you can't make. You can't have cards that aren't in your deck, but you can have any token that your deck doesn't make, because you can have them turned upside down to represent something else. People will often use the wrong tokens to represent stuff, tokens that have the correct keyword on them or slightly different stats, and people just know what they are, because you explain what they are when you put them into play, and you can reconfirm it as you go on and on. As far as I understand it, this is the same in Yu-Gi-Oh! You can use any token to represent any token. The argument is whether you were intending to misrepresent the board state before it starts or during. That's what gets you suspended or banned. The real big brain play in Magic is to have things like a infect token in your deck to put people on a mental wild goose chase. It makes them take bad early decisions. The infect counter would suggest to them that you're going to have little creatures with infect, so they keep a handful of removal, for example. And then when you reveal that you're actually Tron and they can't do the 7 mana, 8 mana planeswalkers, their opening hand is now much worse than it could have been.
Surprise, motherfucker.
It's not really a largely popular 5D chess moment because a lot of people just ignore this shit. I've learned over the years that when I see those sort of things in people's deck boxes, it could be them fucking about and trying to do this little mind game, or it could be not. So I just choose to ignore it largely. It's just one step removed from having a blue-white control deck in red sleeves and a red deck box, and you're wearing a red hat, a t-shirt that says, I love playing Burn. It turns out you're actually playing Control. The real 6D Mega Mind stuff is when you actually drop hints that during the last round you lost to X, so let's say Siege Rhino or Hardened Scales, when in reality your matchup against the Siege Rhino decks or the Hardened Scales decks is good. It leads your opponents to start thinking, oh, maybe they're on X deck or Y deck and my opening hand should be this, and it just either taxes them mentally or makes them make bad decisions, in theory. But ultimately, sometimes people just ignore this shit. LSV's deception and mind games are so much better than any of this nonsense though. They're a high-level player that came from the stars aligning, a singular copy in the board that he happened to draw, and the Adanto being there with a 3 mana, and he bricked that turn. He drew something he couldn't cast, and thus decided to keep the mana up. But the ingenuity came in picking up that token to really sell the bluff. Is this unsporting is the next question, I guess. I know when it happened, a small portion of people online said it was a bit scummy, but that's the real question. Is it scummy or big brain? Ultimately, I love this. I love the little micro advantages you can get from body languages and bluffs and signs and tells. When someone draws a card and they sigh a little bit or their shoulders slump and you can tell they've drawn a bad thing, or perhaps they're bluffing. They've drawn the card they need and you're like, okay, and you shovel it back into your hand and you're pretending you haven't drawn the removal spell you need. I've done this a lot in Paper Magic, and it's what makes Paper Magic so much better than digital, because body language matters. All these things that sort of convert across from other card games like poker or something, the body language tells become part of the game, where digital or remote Magic removes all of that. Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And other card games are inherently games about hidden information. You don't necessarily know your opponent's deck list outside of the big events and top 32s and 8s and stuff. Normally the deck lists aren't shown, so you don't know what they're playing. You don't know what's in their hand either. That information is also hidden, and that leads to an element of not trusting your opponent. They don't have their best interests at heart. They are trying to kill you at the end of the day and win the match. But on top of that, like, there is things that you just aren't meant to know. Hidden information and bluffing is inherent in the idea of holding a hand of cards your opponent don't know. It's cool to compare it to something like Warhammer, that I've played quite a bit of competitive 40k over the last 2 or 3 years or whatever it's been now. And that game is full known information. In every single match, you're meant to know everything your opponent's got in play, the entire army list, and you're meant to really know and have open access to all the stratagems they can employ, their spells, if you will, or their limited one-turn effects. The idea is that you have full known information to allow you to make strategic decisions, and then RNG comes into it, and the maneuvering of your resources comes into it. It's kind of quite significantly different to the idea of hidden information and hidden deck lists, and I love that. Warhammer is kind of openly more honest, and that's why when people will hide shit from you or don't tell you about a stratagem they can use when you didn't know about it, it becomes a lot rougher, a lot more scummy, a lot more gotcha. Magic is so much better when you can fake a combat trick. When your opponent goes to combat and attacks you, and you take a moment to tank and look at your hand and count your mana, and in reality your hand's just 2 fucking planes. Story of my life. LSV reaching for that token is just this on such a massive scale. A Pro Tour semi-final with several thousand people watching. And that's another thing. Beyond the need for this kind of fun gameplay in a paper game, the spectacle of seeing it live or on the coverage that you watch back afterwards after you've heard the story on Reddit or on Twitter is something I wish we got to see more in Magic. It's big brain stuff that I wouldn't have thought of. It makes me approach Magic in a different way. It's also kind of, because of this deception and some people disliking it, it has some heel energy that I also think helps to build narratives and stories into competitive Magic that makes it so much more thrilling than just who played the better deck or what cards are more broken and not banned yet. LSV outplayed most of his opponents at that Pro Tour except for his opponent in the end, Andrew Ellenbogen, who beat him in the finals and went on to win the Pro Tour. But seeing a pro outplay someone not only in the game of Magic, the deck construction, how they maneuvered the ins and outs of the game, but also this interesting extra layer of bluffing and subterfuge, I fucking love it. I think it's really cool. I find it super interesting that another card game might see this as cheating. I know it's not a direct parallel. I know the two examples aren't exactly the same, but they are high-profile examples of how the game as a whole, the system and the rules and the judging allows or disallows or incentivizes or disincentivizes this kind of action. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think Konami would have let LSV get away with that at the finals or semi-finals of a big Yu-Gi-Oh event? How do you feel about it in Magic? Do you feel like it was scummy and it's till this day it still bugs you? And if you can think of another scumbag or genius moment that you would like me to talk about in a video, let me know in the comment section below. Big thank you to Warp Forge for sponsoring this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.